His story of how a modest, weed-choked, 10-acre parcel of pine and hardwoods at the edge of the overly manicured Whispering Pines estates became the epicenter of a legendary, town-altering legal war began not with a bang, but with a politely worded, poison-pen letter from the Homeowners Association. I, Leo Thorne, had inherited the land from my reclusive uncle, a man who valued his solitude above all else. He'd held onto it, a stubborn bulwark against the creeping tide of suburban sameness, and upon his passing, it became my sanctuary, a place to camp, to think, to escape the relentless grind of city life. It was bordered on 3 sides by deep forest, and on the 4th by the pristine backyards of Whispering Pines, whose HOA was famously, notoriously, presided over by a woman named Karen Prendergast. To the residents, she was the vigilant guardian of property values and community standards. To anyone with an independent thought, she was the HOA Karen, a sovereign ruler in a kingdom of beige siding and mandated petunia beds. My first official interaction with her regime was a thick envelope, my name printed with cold precision. The letter cited violations observed from the perimeter, unsanctioned vegetative overgrowth, potential fire hazard, failure to maintain a community-approved aesthetic, and unauthorized, non-conforming temporary structural assembly, my old canvas tent, visible one weekend through the trees. A fine of $250 was assessed, with daily penalties until compliance was achieved. Compliance, a attached pamphlet detailed, meant clearing the land, planting HOA-approved harmonious ground cover, and submitting all future recreational plans for architectural committee review. I laughed, a short, sharp bark in my quiet apartment. I owned the land free and clear, my property was not, and had never been, part of Whispering Pines estates. My uncle's decades-long resistance was now my inheritance. I drafted a succinct reply: your jurisdiction ends at your property line. This land is privately owned and not subject to HOA covenants. Do not contact me again regarding it. The silence that followed was not peaceful. It was the pressurized quiet before a storm. I visited the land next on a crisp autumn Saturday. My truck bounced down the familiar, overgrown track, but as I rounded the final curve, a sight pulled me up short, my foot slamming the brake. The clearing where I always camped, the gentle slope that caught the morning sun, was occupied. Not by a tent. By a structure. A small, prefabricated she-shed or cottage, about 400 square feet, painted a ghastly shade of seafoam green with white trim. It had a little porch, a satellite dish, and a shiny new lock on the door. A neatly graveled path led from it to the Whispering Pine side, where a section of my rusty boundary fence had been removed. For a full minute, I just sat, engine idling, brain refusing to process. This wasn't a mistake. This was an annexation. Stepping out, the crunch of gravel under my boots felt like a violation. I peered in the windows. It was fully furnished, wicker chairs, floral cushions, a small writing desk, a vase of silk sunflowers. A monogrammed K-throw pillow sat on the love seat. The audacity was so colossal it looped back around to seeming like a dream. But the building permit, fluttering in a plastic sleeve nailed to the doorframe, was real. It was issued to the Whispering Pines HOA, for landscape and community amenity structure, parcel lot 12A. My parcel. My survey maps, back in the city, clearly showed lot 12A was my land, a sliver the developer had failed to acquire from my uncle 50 years prior. Karen hadn't just trespassed. She had, with breathtaking arrogance, commissioned the construction of a personal retreat on my property. Blind, red-hot fury propelled me back to my truck. My first call was to my lawyer, Mark Rios, a man with the patience of a saint and the tactical mind of a general. They built a what? He asked, his usual calm replaced by stunned incredulity. Leo, send me every document you have, deed, survey, the HOA letters, everything. Don't touch it. Don't go near it. We'll get a surveyor out there tomorrow with a police escort to document everything. The second call was to the county building department. After being shuffled through 3 departments, a confused clerk confirmed the permit. It was fast-tracked, he said vaguely. HOA said it was for a community garden shed on common land. Signed off by the board president, a Miss Prendergast. The official survey the next day, witnessed by a bemused deputy sheriff, was a masterpiece of vindication. The pink flags and laser lines placed the seafoam green abomination fully 18 feet inside my boundary. The photographic evidence was irrefutable. Mark immediately fired off a cease and desist letter, demanding immediate removal of the structure, restoration of the land, and a formal apology. The response from Karen Prendergast, arriving on HOA letterhead, was a masterpiece of its own genre. It acknowledged receipt of our unfounded claims but stated the HOA's long-standing, de facto use and maintenance of the area in question gave them prescriptive easement rights. They cited the blighted state of my land as a community nuisance and framed the cottage as a stewardship improvement that enhanced the value of the entire area. They offered, in a gesture of neighborly goodwill, to drop all prior violation fines against me and to allow me to apply for limited use of the amenity, pending a background check and compliance deposit. I read it twice, my hands trembling not with anger now, but with a cold, focused determination. This was war. Mark was already 2 steps ahead. Prescriptive easement requires open, notorious, continuous, and hostile use for years. They've got none of that. This is straight-up trespass, conversion, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We're going to sue them into next week, Leo. But we need to follow the playbook. He filed the lawsuit, Thorn vs. Whispering Pines Homeowners Association, et al. The demands were simple: removal of the structure, damages for trespass, emotional distress, and punitive damages for their flagrant, high-handed conduct. We also filed a formal complaint with the county for permit fraud. The discovery process was like opening a treasure chest of arrogance. HOA board emails, obtained via subpoena, revealed Karen's crusade. The Thorn parcel is an eyesore and a haven for raccoons, she wrote. It drags down our comps. The owner is never there. He's a disengaged absentee. The law has concepts of productive use. We are putting that land to productive use for the betterment of the community. Another board member nervously asked about the property line. Karen's response: the old survey is ambiguous. We've maintained that verge for years. By the time any court sorts it out, our position will be established fact. He's a city boy, he'll probably just settle for a few thousand. The building permit application was a work of fiction, listing the HOA common area as the location. The county inspector's notes, however, were telling: site visit requested by applicant. Met HOA President Prendergast on site. She pointed to area. Looks cleared and ready. Approved. He hadn't bothered to pull the plat map. The mediation was a spectacle. Karen Prendergast arrived dressed for a corporate boardroom, flanked by the HOA's slick, expensive lawyer. She was in her late 50s, with a sharp blonde bob and eyes that assessed everything and found it lacking. She didn't look at me as a person, but as an obstacle. Her opening offer was condescending: the HOA would generously purchase the 0.2 acres under the cottage from me for fair market value as vacant land, $5,000, and I would sign a waiver of all claims. I would also agree to bring the rest of my land into visual compliance with Whispering Pines standards within 1 year. Mark didn't blink. He slid a copy of the lawsuit across the table, the damages page highlighted. Our offer, he said calmly. 1. The HOA completely removes the structure and restores the land to its prior condition at its sole expense within 14 days. 2. A public, written apology from Ms. Prendergast and the board, to be published in the local paper. 3. Payment of $300,000 in compensatory and punitive damages to Mr. Thorn. 4. Your client's resignation from the HOA board. Karen's laugh was a dry, brittle thing. Absolutely preposterous. That structure is an asset. You want us to pay you to destroy our asset? This is extortion. She leaned forward, addressing me directly for the first time. Mr. Thorn, be reasonable. You weren't using that little patch of weeds. Now it's something beautiful. Why not just let it be? We can even put a little plaque with your family name on it. The Thorn sitting nook. Wouldn't that be nice? The placid, performative benevolence in her voice was the final straw. I looked at Mark and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible shake of my head. The mediation was over. The trial date was set. The local press, smelling blood, began to circle. HOA drama spills into court, the local paper headline read. Online, the story gained traction: Karen built on my land. The court of public opinion was firmly on my side, a chorus of shared HOA horror stories. But Karen remained unmoved, a queen behind her suburban walls. The HOA doubled down, raising special assessments on the residents to fund the legal defense of community property. The narrative she spun to her neighbors was one of a greedy outsider trying to steal what the community had lovingly maintained. 2 weeks before the trial, I visited the land at dusk. The seafoam green cottage sat there, a smug, alien invader. The K-pillow was visible through the window. The fury I'd managed to compartmentalize for the legal battle came roaring back, pure and primal. This wasn't just about land. It was about the fundamental right to be left alone, to have what was yours be yours. The law was on my side, but the law moved slowly. This thing, this symbol of entitlement, sat on my soil now. An idea, dark and irrevocable, began to form in the back of my mind. Not an act of hot-headed rage, but a cold, deliberate execution of property rights. I called Mark. "What?" I asked, my voice steady. "Is the absolute latest I can wait for them to remove it before I take matters into my own hands?" Mark was silent for a long moment. "Leo, you cannot take the law into your own hands. That's vigilantism. It could ruin our case." "I'm not talking about vigilantism," I said, staring at the cottage. "I'm talking about abatement. If someone dumps toxic waste on your land, you have the right to remove it. If someone leaves an abandoned car, you can have it towed. This is an unauthorized, trespassing chattel fixed to my real property. What are my rights as the landowner to remove a nuisance?" He sighed, the sound of a lawyer entering a gray area. "The law favors peaceful resolution through the courts. If you damage their property, even on your land, they could countersue for destruction of property. The judge would not look kindly on it. It could turn you from the sympathetic plaintiff into an unstable loose cannon. Wait for the trial, Leo. We will win." I hung up, but the idea didn't fade. It crystallized. I wouldn't do it in anger. I would do it by the book. My book. The trial began. The HOA's lawyer painted me as a neglectful, vindictive landowner, hostile to the community. He presented Karen as a dedicated volunteer, a homemaker who only wanted to create a peaceful reading nook for the neighborhood's seniors. But under Mark's cross-examination, the facade cracked. He walked her through the emails. "Maintained that verge for years? Can you produce a single invoice for landscaping on Mr. Thorne's parcel before last month?" She could not. Ambiguous survey? He entered the certified, irrefutable survey into evidence. Productive use for the community? Did you ever invite the community to use this amenity? The meeting minutes showed no such invitation. The cottage's single key, it was revealed, was held by Karen. Then, Mark played his ace. He called the county building inspector. The man, deeply uncomfortable, admitted he'd never verified the lot lines. He'd relied on the applicant's representation. When shown the permit application stating it was HOA common land, he agreed it was inaccurate. The permit, Mark argued, was obtained under false pretenses and was thus void ab initio from the beginning. The structure was not just trespassing, it was an unpermitted building on my land. The judge, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for impatience with fools, was clearly running out of patience. During a recess, she urged settlement again. Karen, her confidence finally wavering, offered through her lawyer to remove the structure. But they wouldn't pay damages, only court costs. They wanted me to sign a mutual non-disparagement agreement. It was a retreat, but not a surrender. They wanted to silence me, to make it all go away quietly. I looked at Mark. "No," I said. "We see it through." The judge's verdict came a week later. It was a rout. She found the HOA and Karen Prendergast individually liable for trespass, conversion, fraud, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. She ordered the immediate removal of the structure and full restoration of the land. And she awarded damages, $150,000 for the torts, plus $50,000 in punitive damages specifically from Karen, payable to me. A total of $200,000. It was a victory, but it felt procedural. The cottage, the physical insult, still stood. The order gave them 30 days to remove it. The 30-day clock ticked. No crews arrived. On day 25, I received a notice of appeal from the HOA's lawyer. They were appealing the damages and the order for Karen to pay personally. The notice also included a request for a stay of execution on the removal order pending appeal, meaning they could leave the cottage there, possibly for years, while the appeals process crawled along. My fury returned, cold and hard. They were using the system itself as a weapon, betting on my exhaustion and their deeper pockets. That weekend, I made my decision. I hired a different lawyer, one specializing in property law and municipal codes. I had him draft a formal, notarized letter to the HOA and Karen Prendergast, sent via certified mail. It cited the county's code regarding the removal of unauthorized, unpermitted structures posing a passive hazard. It gave them formal, 72-hour notice that as the landowner, I would be exercising my right to abate the nuisance. I cited the judge's ruling that the structure was trespassing and the permit void. I was not destroying their property, I was removing an unauthorized object from my own. the letter was a legal razor's edge. 72 hours later, at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, I arrived with a crew. Not a demolition crew. A professional deconstruction crew, with a crane, heavy equipment, and a fleet of dumpsters. I also had a sheriff's deputy present, courtesy of a copy of my lawsuit victory, the notice letter, and the voided building permit. I had a film crew, too, a neutral third-party videographer to document every second in high definition, ensuring no claim of reckless destruction could be fabricated. As the crew leader gave instructions, a silver Lexus SUV screeched to a halt at the broken fence line. Karen Prendergast erupted from it, her face a mask of apocalyptic rage. "What are you doing? Stop this instant. I'm calling the police. I have an appeal." I walked over, the videographer following at a discreet distance. "The appeal is on the damages, Karen," I said, my voice calm, carrying over the diesel idle of the equipment. "Not on the finding of trespass. The judge's order to remove stands. My 72-hour notice to abate the nuisance on my property has expired. This," I gestured to the crew, "is me, cleaning up the trash you left on my lawn." Her scream was incoherent, a shriek of pure, unfiltered entitlement. The deputy stepped between us, informing her she was on private property and could be arrested for trespass if she interfered. She stood there, trembling, as the crane's cable was attached to the roof of her precious cottage. With a groan of metal and a splintering of wood, the entire structure was lifted, intact, from its foundation. It hung in the air for a moment, a ridiculous seafoam green box against the sky. Then, with meticulous care, the crew placed it not into a dumpster, but onto a long flatbed truck. They were not demolishing it. They were relocating it. Onto the flatbed, then driven the 200 yards down the street, and deposited with exquisite precision, directly across the driveway of Karen Prendergast's own immaculate, HOA-compliant home in Whispering Pines, completely blocking her garage. The K-pillow was placed neatly on the front step. The video, from the calm notice to the airborne cottage to its final resting place blocking Karen's driveway, went viral. It was a global sensation. Justice served HOA style. The news outlets that had covered the trial now went into a frenzy. The HOA's appeal became a laughingstock. The appellate court, faced with the viral evidence of their bad faith and the original judge's scathing findings, not only denied the appeal but, in a rare move, sanctioned the HOA and their lawyer for filing a frivolous appeal, adding their legal fees to my judgment. But the true financial hammer fell from an unexpected direction. The story had galvanized the long-suffering residents of Whispering Pines. A recall election saw Karen and her entire board ousted in a landslide. The new board, facing skyrocketing insurance premiums due to the lawsuit and a community in revolt, made a decision. They came to me with a new offer, through Mark. A global settlement. They would not fight the original judgment. They would pay the $200,000 immediately. Furthermore, to avoid the catastrophic legal costs of further litigation, as I had now filed a separate suit for defamation and malicious prosecution, and to compensate for the emotional distress and loss of quiet enjoyment during the appeal period, they offered an additional $1 million. The catch: I had to sign a release agreeing not to sue any individual homeowners, and to drop the suits against the HOA and Karen. The $1 million was to be paid by the HOA's master insurance policy, which was threatening to drop them unless this was resolved. I took the deal. The total, $1.2 million. The seafoam green cottage was eventually removed from Karen's driveway by the new HOA at great cost, as it was now deemed a code violation on her property. She sold her house at a loss and moved away, a pariah. My land was cleared, the fence rebuilt, stronger than before. I used part of the money to build a proper cabin, right on the spot where her cottage had stood. It's modern, beautiful, and completely within my rights. I fly the flag from the old survey map on a pole out front. Sometimes, new residents of Whispering Pines wave hesitantly from the tree line. I usually wave back. The precedent, however, was set in stone. The story is told at every barbecue, every town meeting. Don't assume. Don't encroach. And for God's sake, never, ever underestimate the quiet man whose land you decided to decorate with your seafoam green ambitions. For he might just hand you the bill and then use it to build something truly his own.